Yeah, oh, all right, all right. So, thanks for being here, of course. And at the very start, I would like to first offer a little apology of the methodology of this, so to say, presentation and talk, because the original idea was to talk on time in Vedanta. But then I was thinking, what does it, mean? What is Vedanta? It's in itself a huge topic, and it would seem to me as starting off from somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So therefore I decided to change the concept radically, and actually kind of try to present an overview of the multitude of views on time and philosophy in general that we have or had in India, and therefore necessarily this will be a very, very sketchy account. So, I wanted first of all to say a word or two on the very idea of philosophy in India. It is a huge field and pretty much unexplored yet, even. So those who have time and energy could contribute, especially when it comes to comparative studies, ancient European and ancient Asian philosophies. So, the beginning of speculation in what we nowadays know as the Indian subcontinent were the Vedas. Veda means knowledge, and it is a collection of writing with mostly religious and sacrificial import, but there are also some nuggets or seeds of philosophical speculation. So when it comes to these Vedas or the Vedic literature, they have been preserved on account of the oral reception that was common. So the people would just learn everything by heart and recite them, and that is how we still know much of the Vedic literature. And also, unlike in the case of Greek and Latin, we know precisely how Sanskrit used to be pronounced, because people kept it in memory all along until they were written down. So when it comes to the Vedas, we have four main compilations. These are their names: Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva Veda. The Rig Veda, it contains hymns dedicated to the gods. Sama Veda contains basically the same hymns, but put up metrically so that they can be sung. Yajur Veda contains many sacrificial instructions, prohibitions, stuff like that. And Atharva Veda is a collection of, again, some hymns and also lots of black magic stuff for those who are interested. And now, each of these Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, Atharva, has basically four sections. These sections are Samhita, hymns, dedicated to the gods, Brahmanas, parts that discuss sacrificial rites, and Indian sacrifice, ancient Indian sacrifice, is extremely complex. Without going into any details, Aranyakas are scriptures or parts of the Vedas meant for those people who kind of renounce sacrifices and turn towards self-realizations, and the Upanishads, also known as Vedanta, are purely philosophical scriptures that also often offer symbolic interpretations of the sacrifice, because this sacrifice was actually the how to say, what was the pivot of this Vedic civilization. Everything was centered around the sacrifice. Therefrom, a footnote, also the importance of the cow. We hear so much in nowadays in the world of India. Well, the cow was also important then, because one of the main sacrificial ingredients was the butter, or the clarified butter known as ghee. It was, of course, given by the cow. Milk, butter, and stuff like that. Okay, so that's the Vedic corpus in a few words. These are the most important Upanishads because they're philosophical. And they're also complementary texts, so-called Puranas. Purāṇa in Sanskrit means very old. These are like cosmological, theological, religious scriptures, and unlike the Vedas, they are sectarian. So you have Puranas dedicated to Vishnu, to Shiva, and to the great goddess Kali. These are the most important deities in the Puranas. And we also have itihasas. Itihasa means a history. Itiha-asa, thus it was. And the itihasa of Mahabharata and Ramayana. These are the people sometimes call them Indian Iliad and Odyssey. Although, anyways, yeah. In content, especially in ethics, they are much superior to the Iliad and the Odyssey. Okay, so that was the Vedic corpus, the basic text upon which the speculation in the Hindu world developed. So people usually based their speculations on the scripture, but it wasn't like interpretation only. Lots of different schools developed on the basis of this text. So we have this bifurcation, very basic, Astika and Nastika schools. Asti means is, it's the word to be. Ka is an affix that is used in constructing adjectives, mostly. So Astika, nowadays it's always called orthodox, is a school which says there is, and people would often translate it as theistic schools, but no. Some of them are not theistic. The point is that this Astika or orthodox school say that yes, we accept the Veda, and what we say is also said in the Veda. And they're Nastika, a negation, na-astika, those who say it is not, or those who are not orthodox, heterodox school. Basically, these are the schools that reject the Vedic authority. The orthodox schools are Nyaya, which are the Indian logicians, Vaisheshikas, the Indian atomists, Sankhyas. Sankhya is a very elaborate cosmological philosophy. Yoga is Yoga of Patanjali is the philosophy behind the yoga practice. Mimamsa, this is the philosophy of the sacrifice again. And Vedanta, this is the philosophy of an attempt to systematize the philosophy of the Upanishads. So this account is extremely brief and therefore not only insufficient but incomplete. Yeah. The Nastika schools, we have three main branches. The first one are the Charvakas. Charvaka or Lokayatikas. Lokayatika means a worldly person. Charvaka, it may mean something that chews stuff. So these are the Indian materialists. We don't have any scripture preserved, but we have lots of refutations of their views in the other schools. Jainas are probably the nicest people in the world. They're this is a religion without God. They advocate extreme ahimsa, or non-violence, and they are also very tolerant towards other people's view. They don't reject any view, and their philosophy is sometimes called Syadvada also, because they have, well, perhaps it is like this, or sometimes it is like this, and Bauddha school, these are the Buddhists. Okay, so as we could see, very briefly see, in what we call Indian philosophy that nowadays, there's a multiplicity of views. But some things are common to all the schools. One of the common things, with the exception of the Charvakas, is the eschatological direction of the teachings. Most of the people just desire liberation from the pangs of material existence, or possibly transfer to a heavenly state. Mimamsakas are like that. But there is so this is one. Another characteristic, interestingly, common characteristic, shared characteristic, is the concept of time as beginningless. So all the schools would say that, yeah, time has never started and will never end. There are those who don't accept that time as an entity, as a substance, as a phenomenon exists really, but even they would say, well, there was no beginning of the world, there was no first instance when all this developed. So yes, so here we have several terms by which time is referred to. In Sanskrit, vela is one word. You see, it means several quite closely connected things. We have samaya, which means times, but very often also means a moment, and the right moment. So we can draw a parallel with the Greek kairos here. And the word that is most commonly used is kala. Yeah. Kala comes from the verbal root kal. So Sanskrit is such a language that most of the words are formed by a limited number of verbal roots that then expand into the whole language. So kal, the verbal root kal, means to count, but it also means to push on, to impel, to kind of attack, to urge on, and also to accomplish things. So we can see how it is, or how can it be connected with the way people would understand, or even we understand time, because time is something that we use to count things, of course, or to measure. And time also drives things on, pushes them forward, but it also carries away our lives. At the end. And yes, no need to expand a lot on this. It's rather clear. So, as I already mentioned, we have in the literature allusions to the creative act as taking place in time, or allusions to the original act of creation, but they're all interpreted by the philosophers symbolically. So probably the most famous one is the Chandogya Upanishad passage in Taittiriya. Also there are quite a few of them, but actually nobody really believes that we have this dilemma with the Timaeus. In India they don't have that dilemma. Nobody believes that creation has taken place. It is an eternal cycle. So we have the cyclical concept of time, and in a circle you have no, I mean, you cannot identify a starting point. They're all equally good as starting points and ending points. So there's a little quotation. There's no beginning to time, simply an eternal cycle where future and past melt into one another. Yes. But this beginningless and endlessness of time was not only a concept that was available to the philosophers. It was also part of the of everyday's life, so to say. People in general would accept this concept of vastness of space and immensity of time, and that's what made the ancient Indian civilization somehow uninterested in temporaliness. For example, we don't have many historians in India. The histories are recorded, the histories of ancient times were recorded in the Puranas. So people wouldn't really know Thucydides, because they said, well, this is just a cycle. It goes away and comes back again. Why should I bother with recording historical events? They're very insignificant. The time is endless. And the universe is so vast, we're just a little speck. They don't have this didn't have this geocentric understanding of the universe, or creationist idea. 6,000 something years ago it all started, and we are basically, the most important entities that exist in the universe. So this myth of the ages was introduced relatively early, and we have the parallel in Hesiod. He has 5 ages, but it doesn't seem that it's a cycle in Hesiod. But here we have a cycle of 4 repeating ages. Satya means truth, Dvapara is basically second, Treta, and Kali. These ages last for a very long time. Kali, I could remember only the duration of the Kali. This is the present age, is the Iron Age. Like Hesiod, we have also golden, silver, bronze, then the age of the heroes, and then the Iron Age. So in India we have 4 ages, and Satya is the best age, like the golden age. In Hesiod, things basically grow out of the earth without much effort. The people are long-lived, everybody meditates, and stuff like that. And so we're presently in Kali, in the Iron Age. Everything is bad, and it's been bad since they wrote this stuff. So yeah, and it lasts for 432,000 years. And the ages, their duration goes in the sense of a descending arithmetic proportion, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Dvapara is twice, Treta is 2 times Kali, Dvapara is, yes, like that. And it all amounts to 4,320,000 years, the duration of these 4 ages, or yugas, and that is known as a Mahayuga. So you see, that's 4 million ages. Now, they go in cycle. Now, 1,000 times these 4 ages, that means 1,000 times multiply 4,300,000 multiplied by 1,000. That is the duration of 1 day of the Creator, who is called Brahma. the Indian demiurge. And after these 1,000 cycles pass, so he goes to sleep. And the night lasts as much as the day. So he's taking a good nap. 12 hours nap, let's say it in accordance with our measurement. And when Brahma, when the creator, when the demiurge goes to sleep, a dissolution occurs. Basically, the world, most of the cosmos, not the entire cosmos, is burned and then flooded. So he wakes up, and the creation starts from the beginning. And he lives like, this is one of his days. Then he lives for 100 years. And 1 year consists of 365 days, I believe, also. 12 or 13 months, it depends. They follow both the lunar and solar calendar. It's a bit complicated. So after this entire cycle of hundreds of creators' years, Mahapralaya, or great destruction, ensues. And then the material elements are absorbed into the body or into the glow of the Absolute. And then again the same thing happens. So these things are explained all over the literature. So I chose two very important texts. This is Bhagavad-gītā, which is part of the Mahabharata, and Viṣṇu Purāṇa. This Viṣṇu Purāṇa is dedicated to Vishnu. Yeah, so that would be it, basically. But also, the Indians, since very ancient times, had also developed a system of measurement of minor units of time. So the basic unit, for a while at least, it seemed to be a nimesha. Nimesha is a twinkling of an eye. So you have these 15 nimeshas making one kashta, 30 kashtas making one kala, 30 kalas making one kshana, and 12 kshanas making one muhurta. Muhurta seems to be something like 45 minutes. So they have very, very developed system of time measurement, and there were smaller units than nimesha also. So I read of for example, it is mentioned here, lava. This lava thing, I read somewhere that it is 1/11 of a second, or 1/11 of a moment, whatever that means. So I don't know whether they really had the apparatus to measure these units, but there were these concepts of measurement. And also, in a more philosophical manner, we have this also very interesting and hard to grasp idea. The minutest time unit is a moment required by an atom to move its own length. Or a moment, samaya, the smallest unit, is the time required by an atom to pass through the interval between two atoms. Or sometimes they also have the time that is needed for an atom to traverse a certain length of space in a slow motion. Whatever that means. Okay. So now we pass on to another subject completely. I mentioned the Viṣṇu Purāṇa and the Bhagavad-gītā as a very important scriptures. So they don't discuss only the beginningless of time or time measurement. They also discuss the ontology of time. And in the Viṣṇu Purāṇa, the time is described as a Shakti, or a power of Vishnu, which is the Supreme Being. So the text says that they are basically four powers that God has, and these are Purusha, which is spirit or soul, then Pradhana, which is prima materia or hyle, then Vyakta, which is matter particularized into different elements, basically the four elements plus ether. These are the five basic elements in Indian cosmology. And Kala, which is time. So time is here interpreted as basically as a kind of a divine energy. And it is, again, beginningless, it is endless, and it is the impelling force that kind of stirs up the creation. Because you have this you have this idea of a deity or of an absolute, which somehow or other, for one reason or another, expands into these energies. And you have the prima materia, the pradhana, which is motionless and in need of energization, and which only lies there like the Platonic chora. Only there are important ontological differences. And then it is kind of stirred into action by the influence of Kala. Sometimes we hear this is a very actually common metaphor, that the Absolute looks at matter and thus initiates its activity. And this look could be actually time. Time enters and stirs up everything, and from the pradhana we get the vyakta, the manifestation of the elements, and then they bond together and form the world as we know it, the manifest creation. So in the Viṣṇu Purāṇa we have time as a very, very important energy of the Supreme. And in the Bhagavad-gītā there are a few quotes. Kala Kalayatamaham. This is what Krishna says. Among the Titans, I am Prahlad. This is one character, very important. Among things that count or impel, Kalayatam. So this is ambiguous. It could be either to count or to impel. So among things that count or impel, I'm time. So Krishna is God, and he says, I have different manifestations in this world. One of those manifestations, one of my representatives is time. And there's also one very consequential quote, Kaosmi lokakshaya pravridho lokan samahartum iha pravrittaha. It is spoken to his disciple Arjuna, who is about to start a battle, and he kind of feels uneasy because he's basically battling his relatives and friends for a long list of reasons. And Krishna says you shouldn't really be concerned, because it is me, time I am, the mighty destroyer of the worlds. I came here to annihilate all people. So I already did that. In my aspect of time, they're all dead. The warriors at the battle. So in the Bhagavad-gītā we also get a sense of time as kind of a property of the divine. You see, now we have to rush to the Jains immediately. In the Jaina philosophy, we get the notion of substance. We also have atoms with the Jains, but we won't be paying much attention to it. So substance. Substance is that which is existent, which is real, and it is permanent on account of its essence, and on the other hand, originating and decaying in respect of its modes, or we would say accidents. So they have a very interesting kind of stoic understanding of substance as asti kaya. Asti, kaya means body. So they believe that the substances are mainly bodies. The only exception is time. Time is a substance, but it is non-extended. It's not a body. Among the extended substances, we have the soul, which is extended by the way of consciousness, which permits the body, but it's still called kaya, soma, interestingly. And non-living, the non-living are matter, ether, the conditions for dharma, and dharma are the conditions for motion and rest. Very interesting ontology they have. So when it comes to time, so it is a substance. It is a properly existing entity, but it is not composed of atoms, unlike the other substances. So it is all-pervading, indivisible. It is perceived by inference. It is, to put it differently, inferred. We cannot really see it. And how do we infer time? By observing the sensible object. So if there were no time, then we won't be able to account for the continuity of the substances, of the objects, for their modifications, for their movement, for the concepts of newness and oldness that we have. So all these concepts and all this property are due to the existence of the substance of time. This is how they philosophically infer the existence of a time as something real, because it is the condition without which substances couldn't have the modifications that they have. And these are the main modifications. A continuity, or the main property, continuity, modification, movement, newness and oldness. Yes. So, but although time is such as it is, that is one, eternal, unchangeable, and non-extended, we imposed upon it the measuring units we're all well acquainted with, but this is not proper time. It is called, if you have a harika kala, or conventional time, empirical time. Real time has only this property of continuity. So it never stops. It never ceases to exist. Yeah, so this was the Jains, very, very briefly. When it comes to the Buddhism, time is irrelevant to the Buddhist philosophy, because they don't believe in time as a entity, as a substance, as something existence. The Sankhyas, for example, also don't believe, but never mind. What is important for the Buddhist here is the concept of momentariness, and they rely a lot on it when actually forming their ethics as well, because they would say that momentariness, which is deduced on the basis of a very interesting ontological theory of causation, which says that in a word, for something to exist means to have causal efficiency. And because a thing from moment to moment causes different effects, it is only momentary. For this very reason, they also reject the existence of a soul. They're very human. Soul or self. The self is nothing but a bundle of emotions, of attitudes, of intentions, and it changes. Somehow or other it is kept together in order to be able to reincarnate, but it's not substantial. It changes from moment to moment. What we describe as time has three phases. Phases we all know. Past, future. Past is atita, yet to come. Future is anagata, not have something that has not come yet. And the present. But the present is not real. We don't actually have the present. It is sometimes described by this all comes from Theravada Buddhist. We can also call it orthodox Buddhist school, which survives in the south mostly nowadays. That is Lanka. While these Chinese, Japanese, Tibetan Buddhism, this is called Mahayana Buddhism, they kind of differ a little bit. So sometimes they describe present as the moment in which coming, stability or stasis, and breakdown meet together. And then we can expand it in different ways and understand it as we like it. But the important thing, hiti, or permanence, or stability, is actually non-existent. It is immeasurable segment of the continuous flow of what we call time. And as something that we are trying to grasp all the time, that is why this doctrine is called Kshanika Vada, or the doctrine of momentariness. This present is something that we are trying to grasp all the time, but it is elusive because it actually has no duration. It is just a flow that we try to catch and remain puzzled and bewildered by this attempt. So this is Heraclitean philosophy brought to its furthest limits. And then the Buddhist would say we shouldn't go on chasing this kshana or this moment because it is immeasurable and always fleeting, but we should try to find stasis or sthiti or stability or permanence in the moment. It is also called kshana, a moment, or in the eternal now, which we also call nirvana or liberation. So it is not available in this world. Okay, now we all again jump to a very new subject. This is the Vaisheshika understanding of time. Vaisheshikas were, to refresh your memory very briefly, the Indian atomists. So they also recognize different kinds of substances. Basically nine kinds: earth, water, light, air, ether, time, space, soul, and mind. The first four are basic elements we know from Greek philosophy as well, Greek cosmologies, and they have eternal and non-eternal aspects. The eternal aspects are the atoms. So unlike the Greek atomists, they recognize substantially different atoms. So you have atoms which are eternal, indivisible, indestructible, uncreated, but it is not, they are not qualityless, like Democritus is. You have atoms of earth, water, and the other two elements. Ether, time, space, soul, and mind, they're non-atomic. Well, time is then a substance, but it is imperceptible, eternal, all-pervading. Time is the reason why we are able to conceive of the notions that we call past, present, future, older, younger. So this is very close to the Jaina understanding of time, if we can recall. And again, like in the Jaina system, time is one undivided substance, but we conventionally speak of it with respect to the different divisions of time we are very well aware of. And it cannot be measured, it cannot be grasped on itself, so it is not perceptible, it is inferred again, but we measure it with the help of the celestial clock, the planets like the sun. So these were the so we heard the Buddhists and the Jainas. These were Nastika, non-orthodox philosophies. We heard very briefly the Vaisheshikas, and Vaisheshikas, they are orthodox, they believe in the Veda, and now we go to the Vedanta view. Now Vedanta is also a very complex system. There are at least five very important, there are five very important interpretations of the Vedanta Sutras and of the Upanishads, and they're all called Vedanta. Some are theistic, some are atheistic, so it's a plethora of views and understanding. So I have to go very quickly now because time has elapsed basically. In the Viṣiṣṭadvaita Vedanta, we have time as a substance, as an entity coexistent with God, but interestingly enough, as a thing which is directly perceived. So it is not inferred. We perceive it together with perceiving the object. Because we perceive the objects as something that was of a certain kind before and something that will be of a certain kind after. That means that we also perceive the time which is attached to this entity or object. We also have a sense of present which is ungraspable. You cannot determine the present, but we have it on account of the real nature of time, substantial nature of time, which in its essence is eternal now. So on account of our ability to perceive time, although we are not aware that we are perceiving it, we can form the concept of present. This is actually the eternity of time. So there's also different views within the same school, but we're going to skip them over. The Gauḍīya Vedānta is the latest interpretation. It's from the 16th century, I believe. This is the great scholar Baladeva Vidyabhushana, he's called. He wrote a commentary. And he's a monotheist and a pluralist at the same time. So he accepts the existence of five principles, which are God, soul. They're eternal and characterized by consciousness. Then there is matter and time. They're eternal, but they're dull, unconscious. And there is karma. Karma has no beginning, but has an end. Very interesting. And time is, as we know it, present, past, and future. It can be measured by different units. We imposed upon it. It is in constant motion. And it is, like in the Puranic view, it is the cause of creation and destruction. Efficient cause, actually, of creation and destruction. Lastly, we have Bhartṛhari. Why is he very important? Because he is the best known scholar who devoted substantial sections of his writing to the concept of time. So he was living in the 5th century approximately, and he was a grammarian. So he belongs to this grammarian school, which is initiated by Panini. Panini, he wrote a very important treatise on grammar somewhere in the 4th or 5th century BC. And that's an amazing, it's a manual and treatise at the same time. It's called Ashtadhyayi because it has 8 books or chapters. It consists of, I believe, 4,000 aphorisms, and you have the whole language there. And again, we have it in its entirety preserved because the people were learning it by heart. That's how they learned Sanskrit. They would memorize the Ashtadhyayi and then just apply the rules on the language they were using. So this person, he belongs to this line of teachers and philosophers, and he also seems to rely on one Upanishad, which is called Maitri Upanishad, where time is discussed again as a very, very important factor in the process of the creation of the world. So Bhartṛhari is not only a grammarian. Vakyapadiya is the title of his main work. It is a treatise on language, but he discusses ontology a lot because he wants to show, first of all, how the one unified word, Shabda Brahma, expands into the diversity of words that we call language. So this a parallel can be drawn to a degree with the Heraclitean logos or the Christian logos also, which is a word. So this is the main subject of his study is actually language, but he sees complementarity between language and ontology, and the end of all grammar and language study is actually to reach the one, union with the one. So he discusses this one. This one is called Brahman, or the Absolute. It is the only reality that exists, but it has different shaktis or powers. One of these power is time, and on account of the activities of this power of time, the one becomes many. So how does that happen? For again we say unknown reason, and this is again only a logical sequence. It is not that it ever happens. Brahman, or the Absolute, manifests his potencies of time and space within which diversity takes place, and on account of this activity of time, the phenomenal word occurs. And Kala, or time, in this material world, in this world of phenomenon, as we can probably remember from the dilemma we had with the Bhagavad-gītā verse of where Kala was described as impeller, or a measurer, he takes up maybe the same dilemma and describes time as a measurer of activities and also as a driving force over everything that is. So, as a driving force, it has two basic potencies. The one potency is to permit or to push. The other potency is to prevent. With the application of the permitting or pushing potency of time, the entities start to develop and grow. With the application of the preventing potency, decay occurs, and things and entities and the world itself dwindles and goes back into the unmanifested state, and it goes on and on and on and on like that. So, as a result of these permitting and preventing activities, we perceive time as past, present, and future. And this is very interesting. When an action ceases, time is called past. When something is about to happen, time is called future. When action has been initiated, but not yet completed, time is called present. So this is a very convenient definition of present, I found. And it is interesting because very similar definition is also found in the Visishta Advaita understanding of time, where present is defined basically in the same way, and these writings come after Bhartṛhari. Yes, so when action has been initiated but is not yet completed, time is called present. Okay, the essence of Bhartṛhari's viewpoint is that time is an independent power of Brahman, of the Absolute. Kala, or time, is characterized by its two energies of pratibandha, which is prevention, and abhyanugya, which is permission. So that would be it. I'm kind of sorry that I had to rush through these, very immense time periods and great number of thinkers and ideas. But it is still my hope that somehow, we could get something out of it. I certainly do, and in the future time, some of these ideas may be developed and maybe applied to this things we're doing or exploring. And yes, I would at the end like to thank you very much for your attention and tolerance.
Thank you.